Hi all, welcome to fall. Welcome to wonderful early December, where the weather starts to get cold and you have to start putting your lawn equipment away for the winter. I have something I do here to ensure that all my equipment starts up just as it did when I put it away. Because oftentimes when you put your equipment away in the fall or the winter, and when you go to start it back up in the springtime, it either won't start or it'll run terribly. There's something I like to do to prevent that from happening, and I will walk you through what I like to do in order for it to start in the springtime. I will be using this Troy-Bilt trimmer here. So the story on this trimmer is I had it running really nicely, but unfortunately, one of my family members had a Troy-Bilt trimmer that the connecting rod blew. And if you know Troy-Bilt, they don't offer very much parts. And I don't remember the full story, but it was either I couldn't find a connecting rod or it was uber expensive. So what did I do? I took it out of this trimmer. And this trimmer's been sitting for about 6 months apart in a box with no engine block. I did something else with the rest of the engine block. I might have put the piston on it too. Nonetheless, this engine had no block. So it's been sitting in a box for about 6 months. And I recently stumbled along another trimmer. It was a Craftsman trimmer. It had the same block, but it did not have a trigger. It did not have a gas tank. It did not have a trimmer head, and it was missing lots of parts. But you know what it did have? It did have a block. So I took the block from that Craftsman trimmer off, and I put it on this Troy-Bilt trimmer here. And now the trimmer is back together, and it runs fantastic. I'll start up in a minute here just to show you. Which leads me to our first step of putting our trimmer away for long term, is to start it up and warm it up. Make sure it runs okay, let it run for a little bit, and just warm it up. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to prime it up. Turn the choke on, trigger. Half choke. No choke. As you can hear, this trimmer runs pretty good. The only thing you can hear is a little bit of a squeak coming from the engine. That is the clutch. The clutch on these trimmers really likes to make lots of squeaking noises. So eventually, maybe in the springtime, I'll have to take it apart, clean out the clutch, sand it, and then put it back together and hope it doesn't make that noise anymore. Alright, so as you can see and hear, that trimmer does not sound good because of that clutch. It's starting to annoy me. But it runs pretty good, and it's warmed up now. It's been running for quite a while yet. So, now I'm going to start the process. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drain out the fuel in the gas tank. Because as fuel sits over time, water can accumulate in it. And if you run ethanol fuel, it can go bad over time. It can mix with the water, and it can corrode your engine parts. So just take your fuel out. It'll do better for just about everything. Now for me, that gas tank that you see on the right there, that is full of mixed 40-to-1 two-stroke gas. Now, because I fix engines a lot, most of them don't have gas in them, and I will use that probably by January. So that fuel will not go bad, especially because it does not have ethanol in it. But if you don't use that fuel often enough, there's a few things you could do with it. You could put the fuel in a gas tank like I did, and just put some fuel stabilizer in it. You could put the fuel in a snowblower. If you have a snowblower, you could put the fuel in a vehicle. Now, it does have oil in it, so it will smoke. So whatever you feel like you need to do with it, you can do with it. What I'm also going to do after I drain out my fuel, I'm going to tip my trimmer on its side, and then I'm going to press the primer bulb. Probably loosen the gas cap would be a good idea. I'm going to press the primer bulb, keep pressing it until no more fuel gets drawn up from the intake fuel line. Okay, so now all the primer bulb is sucking is air, no fuel whatsoever. That's what we want. Now what you're going to want to do is drain your gas tank again, because believe it or not, there is still some fuel in there, and that's not good. Even though it's just a little bit, it can still affect things in the springtime. When you go to put more fuel in it, it'll mix with that fuel, and that bad fuel will combine with the good fuel, and, you know, your trimmer could not run right. So I just dump it out. So I'm going to go dump it out real quick, and then I'll show you what else to do. I don't know about you, but can you hear those geese in the background? I guess they're going somewhere warm. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay, so I just got done dumped the remaining fuel out of here. There's no fuel left in here. Again, you can put it in a container with stabilizer. You could put it in something else that you're going to use. Whatever you want to do with it, just as long as it doesn't sit without fuel stabilizer in it for a while. Now, I'm going to explain the next step to you all. So here, I have some 2-cycle engine oil that you mix with your gas to run in your trimmer. If you use True Fuel, you can pick up some of this stuff anywhere where you buy trimmers. This is an Ace one. You can buy it at Home Depot. You can buy it at Lowe's. You could buy it, again, pretty much anywhere where you can buy a trimmer. You're going to need a can of that, and then you're going to need some spare fuel line. This, again, you could get almost anywhere you can get a trimmer. If not, you can pick up some of this stuff on Amazon. This is the 3/32 by 3/16 size. All you need is just a foot or two. You'll see what I'm going to do with that in a second. Now you see I also have this Marine 2-stroke oil here. This stuff is a lot cheaper than this. Now you typically don't want to run Marine oil in your weed whacker because Marine engines are water cooled and weed whackers are air cooled. And the two-stroke oils have a different kind of formula in them. So this one is made differently than that one is. But right now, I'm not going to run it in the engine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to backfill the carburetor with this 2-stroke oil. Because 2-stroke oil, when it sits on your diaphragms, it tends to preserve them better than gas does. So if you have ethanol sitting on your diaphragms, they'll get hard and they won't work right in the spring. But oil is much better to have in there than gas or even air, because, you know, gas can still be in there, it could dry out, and then it could harden your diaphragms. But if you have oil in there, it typically does a great job of preserving them. That's what I've found out in the past, and that's what I've been using. It always works for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pump in to the carburetor Marine 2-cycle oil so it preserves all the diaphragms in the carburetor. You could do it with the regular 2-cycle engine oil that you normally use to mix your gas. That works fine. Whatever 2-cycle oil, if you use this more, if you have it, you can use that. You could use that too. Just make sure you're not running your trimmer off of this. Got it? Good. So for my sake, I will be using the Marine oil because it is cheaper, and I have much more of it because I have a 2-stroke outboard from 1976 that likes to burn about 5 gallons of gas per hour. So it uses one of these about every 7 or 8 times we go out. We use a full one of these. So I have a lot of this. And the Echo Red Armor oil I have, that's the 2-stroke oil I have. That is probably 3 times the price per gallon over this. So this is what I'm sticking with, and this is what I'm going to use today. Again, I'm not running it through the engine, so it's not that big of a deal. Anyways, I flip the trimmer over on its side here to where I can access the 2 fuel lines. There is one fuel line facing the back of the entire trimmer here. This one in particular is green. It is on the primer base. It's closest to the primer bulb, and there's one that's on the main body of the carburetor. what you want to do is you want to pop the fuel line off that's on that main body of that carburetor. And what you want to do is you want to take some fuel line and hook one end to the carburetor, and the other end of that fuel line is going to go right into your two-stroke oil. It doesn't matter if it's a little bottle or a big bottle, as long as it's sucking up two-stroke oil. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pump your primer bulb. Make sure that this fuel line's still on. Pump up your primer bulb. You see it's sucking up oil there? That's what you want. That means the oil is going into the carburetor. You want to do this until you start to see oil come out of the other fuel line. Once you see oil starting to come out of the other fuel line, that means your entire carburetor has been filled with two-stroke oil, and it is preserved. I like to pump it a few more times extra just so I get some in this fuel line too. Again, not necessary, but I like to do it. Also, the oil will fill your primer bulb. If you have a clear primer bulb, you will see that oil fill that primer bulb. So there is a bunch of oil coming out of this line now. I'm just going to wait a few seconds just to ensure that all the oil is settled into the carburetor. Again, not necessary, but I like to do it. Once oil starts coming out of here and there's oil in your primer bulb and you've waited a few seconds, then you can go ahead and remove this fuel line, put that somewhere else, and then take your other fuel line from the gas tank and put it back on. And then once you do that, your trimmer should be good to go for the winter time. When you come back in the springtime, fill your tank with your two-stroke gas, and then pump your primer bulb. If it says do it 10 times, maybe do it 15 times. If it says 6 times, maybe do it 12 times. Do it a few more times than the manufacturer recommends. Really get that fuel in the carburetor, get the oil out, and then go ahead and start your trimmer. The first gas tank through, it will be a little bit smoky because you do have that little bit of two-stroke oil that was in your carburetor, in your gas tank. So it will be a little smoky the first round, the first gas tank through. That's normal. And once you run your second gas tank through, everything should be normal again. But it's that simple. You're done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fuel line here, and I'm just going to raise it up, try to get all the oil out of the fuel line. If I can't, that's okay. I'm just going to leave this here for a little while, and the oil should drain over time. So as you can see here now, all of the oil has been drained out of the fuel line. I just took the fuel line, raised up one end, and put the other end back in the container, and all the oil has come out. Now my hands are really oily, and if you don't want your trimmer to become oily, make sure to wash your hands before you go put it away. But other than that, we're all done. Simple and easy. And you didn't even have to use a single tool. So that is my no tools required way to put your trimmer away for the winter time. I hope it helped some of you guys out in the springtime. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Nonetheless, have a good winter, everybody, or at least the best it can be while being cold, and have a good day.